ضيوفنا الكرام، سوف نستهل البرنامج بعد قليل. نرجو منكم التكرم بالتوجه إلى مقاعدكم. Dear guests, our program is about to begin shortly. Please find your way to your seats. ضيوفنا الكرام.
Ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you, God's blessings and His mercy. Today, a number of questions were raised, including what is the difference between human-centered design and current technological innovations? How do we protect our languages and our cultures in a rapidly changing world? And how can we pave the way to ensure that innovation does not outpace humanity? This is a pivotal question that we shall address today. However, before that, a question from my side. Have you ever heard of the Kora instrument? This is an art that has been passing down from generation to generation. If this instrument is not familiar to you, don't be sad. We are happy to have a Gambian artist. She's a music teacher and global activist. She, as a matter of fact, embodies the harmony between heritage and progress. She is an international artist, and as a matter of fact, she has a peculiar style. She will be playing music and she will be joining her son. Please welcome Sona Jobarteh.
Good afternoon.
طاب يومكم وشكرا جزيلا لهذه الدعوة الكريمة. أنا من غامبيا، من غرب أفريقيا، وأولئك الذين لا يعرفون هذه الأداة هي أداة موسيقية تعود إلى التاريخ القديم، عمرها 700 عام، تعود إلى القرن الثالث عشر، وخلال القرون السبعة شكلت تقليدا حصريا للرجال، ولكن على نحو تدريجي بدأ الأمر يتغير. إذن أنا كامرأة أقف أمامكم وأعزف على هذه الآلة، ولكن بطبيعة الحال أتشبث بهذا الإرث. أسرتي تعود إلى القرن الثالث عشر، وأسرتي حافظت على هذا التقليد وعلى هذه الآلة لعقود وقرون. وأنا أيضا مؤسسة لأكاديمية غامبيا، وبينما ترونني كموسيقية على المسرح أقول للناس وأذكركم بأن الموسيقى هي لغة، بالنسبة لي هي وسيلة تواصل، وبالنسبة لي أستخدمها كمنبر أولي لكي أناصر أهمية التعليم وإحداث إصلاحات في هذا القطاع في القارة السمراء. في عام 2015 أسست هذه الأكاديمية كاستجابة لعدم الارتياح والغضب والاستياء الذي رغم أن أمتنا وأمم أخرى في أفريقيا احتفت بعقود من الاستقلال، ما نزال نشهد إرث التاريخ الاستعماري في منظومتنا التعليمية. هذه الأكاديمية أسستها على وجه الخصوص للتصدي لتحديات إنهاء الاستعمار في برامجنا التعليمية، ولنحسن المناهج التعليمية ولكي نعزز من هذه الرسالة. أردت أن أبدأ مجددا. هذه الرسالة كانت وما تزال تشكل مهمة شاقة هائلة، ولكنني أراها مسارا ضروريا للوصول إلى ما أراه كاستقلال حقيقي للأمم الإفريقية. للسوء الطالع في عام 2025 شبابنا منكشفون على منظومات تعليمية تدعوهم إلى الذهاب إلى المدرسة وارتداء ملابس المستعمرين. أن يأتوا إلى المدارس ليتحدثوا لغة المستعمر، وأن يأتوا إلى المدارس ويتعلموا تواريخ الأمم الأخرى بخلاف أمتهم. وعندما يتعلق الأمر بالثقافة الثقافة الإفريقية والقيم الإفريقية والروحانيات الإفريقية، إذا ما كنت محظوظا يمكنك أن تختبر ذلك كنشاط لا صفي بعيدا عن المنهاج الدراسي الأساسي. هذا يجب أن يتغير بالنسبة لي. إذا ما تحدثنا عن التنمية، إذا ما تحدثنا عن المنظومة التعليمية وحداثتها في العالم المعاصر، يجب أن نتصدى للحاجة الملحة لإعادة بناء منظومتنا التعليمية من قاع الهرم إلى أعلاها بالاعتماد على التاريخ الإفريقي والهوية الإفريقية والثقافة الإفريقية والتاريخ الإفريقي. هنا إلى جانبي يقف ابني، ولكن الأهم من ذلك هو طالب في الأكاديمية الغامبية، وعلى مدى 10 أعوام أعلم أن الكثير من الأفارقة يعرفون ما أتحدث عنه. عادة بعض الأسر ترسل أبنائها إلى الخارج، وعادة إذا ما كنا من النخبة فنرسل أبنائنا إلى الخارج، وهذا يبرهن على ما قلته سابقا. نحن نفكر بالفكرة والأيديولوجية التاليتين: لكي نكون أذكياء يجب أن نكون متغربين. لذا أردت أن أبرهن على أن تدريس الشباب وانكشافهم على التفكير الناقد وريادة الأعمال والقيادة والسياسة والحوار والثقافة والمعلوماتية والهندسة والرعاية الصحية منذ الصغر، لأن هذه الأمور نحتاجها في بلادنا، ولكننا ننتظر حتى يتخرج الخريجون قبل أن نعلمهم بطريقة مفيدة لكي يكون لهم مغزى في حياتهم. نحن مستاءون لأن الكثير من الناس يسافرون خارج القارة السمراء، ولكن نحن الذين ساعدناهم منذ البداية على فعل ذلك. وعندما ينكشف الشباب على منظومات أيديولوجية، منظومات تعليمية مرتبطة بالغرب، ماذا تتوقعون؟ الحلم أن يغادر الشاب، الحلم أن يذهب إلى ذلك المكان، وهكذا يعود إلى بلاده لكي يجعلنا متحضرين وأكثر غربنة. إذن هذا ما أقوم بهذا ما أهاجمه في صميمه. هذا الجيل التالي، وابني يمثل كل شاب في أكاديميتنا، في أكاديمية غامبيا التي تتحدث عن هؤلاء الشباب عندما يحدثون تغييرا في المنظومة التعليمية.
So I'm here to play music.
أنا هنا لأعزف الموسيقى، ولكن أيضا أريد أن أركز الناس بأن الموسيقى في المجتمعات الإفريقية ترتبط بمهمة اجتماعية. يعني بذلك أن أذكر الأفارقة بثقافتهم وهوياتهم، وهذا جانب أساسي من ثقافتنا استطعنا من خلاله أن نحافظ على هوياتنا، ولذلك اخترت هذا الوسط لكي أتواصل مع الآخرين. وحقيقة وقوفي هنا أمامكم اليوم يرتبط بحقيقة أنني استخدمت الموسيقى التي أعزف عليها لكي أحوز هذا الاعتراف ولكي أعزف وبقوة. لذلك إنه لم دوعي شرفي أن أقدم لكم قطعة موسيقية من هذا التقليد، والأغنية اسمها فوريا، وترتبط وتمتزج مع
It is the most ancient instrument that we have from this region of the continent, which is called mandeng, which existed before the enforced borders that we now live under, such as Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, and Guinea-Bissau. This is the preservation of our original identity that we are still struggling to redefine under those forced borders. And so this is why I say this has far more greater meaning than entertainment. This is a reminder of who we are, and this for me is the hope of maintaining and building that identity into the future, to make sure that young people do not feel they need to abandon their culture, and abandon their identity in order to become recognized and to be successful in this world. So this song is called Jarabi Foroya, and it is from West Africa, the Mandeng tradition. This instrument is called the kora, 21 string. Some people call it the harp, but I don't like calling it the harp. It is the kora. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا لك سونا، وشكرا لوريثها الشرعي. على فكرة هذا التقليد ميراث يورث على مدى أكثر من 700 عام. الأب يورث ابنه، واليوم الأم ورثت ابنها. هذا الأداء أعاد إلينا معنى أن يبقى التقدم قريبا من الإنسان، وأن تبقى الثقافة والهوية جزءا من أي طريق نحو الابتكار. الآن من أوتار التقاليد ننتقل إلى الشاشات التي تشكل ملامح حياتنا الرقمية. متحدثتنا التالية تشارك سونا القناعة نفسها، حماية ما يميز إنسانيتنا في هذا العالم الرقمي، وخاصة أطفالنا. كان لقيادتها دور محوري في تعزيز سياسات السلامة الرقمية ورفاه المستخدمين على الإنترنت والاستخدام المسؤول للتكنولوجيا بين الشباب. رحبوا معي بحرم رئيس الوزراء في
youngsters, please join me in welcoming the wife of His Excellency the Prime Minister of Greece, Maria Grabowski Mitsotaki, the Creative Director of Studio Ma. السيدات والسادة، الضيوف الأعزاء، طاب يومكم. أقف أمامكم لأقدم لكم جانبا يرتبط بالتغيرات المجتمعية والتحديات المجتمعية التي نواجهها اليوم. أعلم أنني لا أصفق بمفردي عندما يتعلق الأمر بخطورة التكنولوجيا وعلاقة ذلك بالقرائية وتأثيرها على الصحة العقلية للأطفال. أتوقع أن جل أولياء الأمور يخشون رحبة الذكاء الاصطناعي والتواصل الاجتماعي والهواتف النقالة، ويفكرون في مستقبل أبنائهم وبناتهم، وأعلم أنهم يشعرون بالعجز لتغيير ذلك. لذا فإن الوعي مهم للغاية. لا تفهمونني خطأ، أنا أؤمن بقوة التكنولوجيا وسلطتها لتغيير الحياة. ليس لدي هاتفي معي، ولكن عادة هاتفي لا يفارقني. أنا أحب ما يوفره لي القدرة على التعلم والاستهلاك والمراقبة والتواصل من خلال احتمالات لا نهاية لها في عالمنا. عندما يستخدم الهاتف النقال على نحو حصيف وعندما تستخدم التكنولوجيا بحذاقة فإنها تشكل قوة خير، ولكننا نؤمن بالطفولة وبحاجة أطفالنا ورغبتهم للتعلم ليس من الخوارزميات أو البوتس أو الريل، ولكن من خلال النظراء، من خلال المعلمين، ومن خلال الأصدقاء والكتب والموسيقى واللعب والرياضات والأنشطة ذات الصلة. إن متعة التفاعل بين البشر وتقاسم المعرفة أمور أساسية، وهي قيم مهمة للغاية في عالم
as technology pulls us apart. Rather than being used as a force for good, today we have reached a point where we risk irreparable harm to the next generation by sacrificing the integrity of childhood on the altar of technology. The monetization of children has to stop. I realized this gravity of the situation when I read a year and a half ago, The Anxious Generation, a book by Jonathan Haidt, a brilliant yet terrifying expose on the effects of screen time and social media, what Haidt called the great rewiring of childhood. As a mother, albeit of 3 grown-up kids, that great rewiring frightened me. I knew that I had to use my position to raise awareness of the dangers, to call for action. So, in an irony that is not lost on me, I posted about my fears on social media, and the floodgates opened. Anxious parents from all over reached out to highlight their shared concerns about the pressures they feel to do something about it. They feel powerlessness in the face of technology's relentless assault. Some offered advice. Others said, "Can we help in doing something?" Alarmingly, some raised how, when they did so, something about the time on their kids spent on their phones, they either got some negative reaction or they were often shunned by other parents. Smartphone and social media use is an epidemic addiction that threatens to deprive the next generation of their ability to socialize, to sleep, or to focus. It means less time outdoors, less play, less reading, and more isolation. It means hundreds of notifications a day, making sustained focus nearly impossible. It means late night pings that disrupt healthy sleep cycles. And it means apps that are designed to keep kids hooked. The longer they scroll, the more profit these platforms make. The impacts are astonishing. Rates of anxiety, depression, and self-harm have skyrocketed since 2010, the year smartphones became widespread among teens. Screen battles between parents and kids threaten family cohesion and make shared family time rarer and more fragmented. Some peer-to-peer conflict no longer ends at the school gate. It continues on screens, day and night. Explicit, violent, or extreme material is always just a few clicks away, often pushed by algorithms. And of course, many of these platforms have become digital hunting grounds for predators. This has to stop. I'm a grown-up, and I struggle every day to break away from my phone. But my brain is fully formed, so I have a choice. I can exercise to put down my phone. Our children, whether they're 5 or 15, often can't exercise that choice, even if they want to spend less time online. By 5, their brains are developed to a 90%. But it takes 15 years of the brain to properly mature. This is scientific evidence, it's not me. So at a time when there should be reading, playing, and socializing, we have instead introduced them to continuous interaction with screens that activates the brain's reward and stress system at a hugely impressionable moment. Each video, each post, acts as a tiny surprise, releasing dopamine, the chemical linked to pleasure and reward. Over time, the brain begins to crave this constant stimulation, forming patterns of impulsivity that are difficult to break. According to the scientific evidence, again, this cycle of social reward, peer validation, and novelty is having a profound effect on our children's growth and development. And if we don't do something about it now, the damage to this generation might be just irreparable. So what do we do? Well, many parents have contacted me and said, we should stay firm. And this is what a lot of them do. But many others are reluctant to make the conscious choice to act. They find it hard hard to set an example, given they're on their screens all the time, hard to challenge their kids for fear of damaging the relationship. Instead, they outsource parental responsibility. Do I blame them? No, I don't blame them. I understand them. Let me give you an example. Over the summer, I was out for dinner with my family. We were sitting across two young families. There were 6 kids at the table, aged between 5 and 8. When in times past, they might have been playing, running out, reading, they were on their phones. The youngest was even being fed by the parent as they stared, unblinking, at the screen in front of them. Of course, you could argue that screens are just modern-day version of giving our kids books or arts and crafts, or a bucket and spade to play in the sand, all designed to occupy them. True. But when did books or arts and crafts or playing in the sand ever affect our mental health or our brain's development? I raise this example not to single out parents, but to empathize with them. Why? Because tackling the effects of this addiction shouldn't be down to parents alone. When the world woke up to the dangers of passive smoking, kids sitting in the back seat of a car without a seat belt, did we leave enforcement to the parents alone? Of course we didn't. We gave them the tools to act. We legislated, we regulated, we taxed, we even banned in some cases. In this case, too, the state and every state has to act as a gatekeeper. And yet today, I fear we're a bit too slow to react in comparison to tackling any other proven societal harm. And that puts parents in an impossible situation, because it shouldn't be about parents. It's very difficult to tell your child they're going to be the last person without a phone in a room full of their peers with phones. Besides, children identify with one another. They feel like they need to be alike. When it comes to children standing out, it's alienating, uncomfortable. It creates distance between them and their peers. They want to dress alike. They want to look alike. Rather, if we accept there is a harm when young children use these devices as pacifiers and 24/7 supports, then we must ensure governments and global institutions lead and big tech and the social media companies follow,
سوف يكون
not
مرتبطا
the other way around.
بتحويل هذا المسار.
Of course, since there has been so much said about it, there are good things that are happening.
هناك الكثير من الأمور الخيرة التي تحصل. هنالك قوانين تجعل من السهولة بمكان أن نرفع بلاغات بشأن تعزيز الشفافية وعلاقة ذلك بالدعايات، وأيضا أن نكون حازمين فيما يخص المنصات الرقمية. في اليونان ثمة مبادرات مختلفة، ومبادرة أساسية ترتبط بالكيدز وولت، وهو تطبيق على الهاتف لتحديد عمر المستخدم، وهذا تطبيق مرر من خلال الحكومة، وهي مبادرة مميزة. كيدز وولت توفر إشرافا من قبل أولياء الأمور من خلال كلمة مرور آمنة. يمكن لأولياء الأمور أن يحجبوا تطبيقات مشوبة بالاشتباه، ويمكن استخدام أيضا هذا التطبيق لتحديد الوقت الذي يمكن أن يستغله الطفل. هناك أيضا تحقيق من العمر من خلال بنية تحتية أساسية، ولكن يتطلب الأمر تعاونا من قبل المنصات الأساسية الكبرى التي لم تكن صريحة في تعاونها لغاية الآن. ولكن مع ذلك حتى لو كنا قادرين على ضمان هذا التعاون ولكن
we cannot settle for the status quo. We have to believe that we can tackle the detrimental effects of social media, smartphone addiction, and now worryingly the advent of the chatbot that wants to be our children's next new best friend. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a more fundamental question at play here. At what point do we say none of this is working? Literacy levels are falling. Kids are seemingly spending more time building friendships and seeking advice through their screens rather than from their peers. As a consequence, the incidence of mental health disorder are increasing by the day. The truth is, there's a lot of discussion going on between businesses and governments, but the actions do not match the rhetoric. Yet, if the tech giants behind this revolution took a step back, they'd realize that their legacies will be entirely dependent on affecting real change by working with governments, institutions, and parents rather than waiting to be legislated against. After all, the kids in the eye of this storm are the tech users of tomorrow. We all owe them the opportunity to experience a childhood alongside tech rather than a childhood consumed by tech, which is why I think and believe that we need to do more. First, we must come all together, educate each other, talk about these problems, inform each other, form action committees, speak to our children, speak to our teachers, drive awareness, write to our governments, to our local representatives, to bombard the tech bosses, shout with one voice. Second, take the dangers seriously. Talk empathetically to your kids before others do. Don't make this an issue of division. Make it an issue of discussion and interaction with your children. I think we must embrace what Hyde and others have advocated for: the legislation to restrict young people access to social media. Young meaning up to 14, 15. Banning smartphones in schools wherever they haven't been banned. Something we did in Greece in the last year. And yes, if necessary, pass a law that ensures no child under the age of 14 can have access to a smartphone. If we achieve this, we will be taking the decision, making away from parents, while simultaneously giving them the power to build relationships where their children free from the pressure of smartphones. Some will see this as too much. I know, I've heard that before. But it comes from a good place, because it is seeking to protect kids at an impressionable and vulnerable moment in their development from something that could be life-changing, but is instead more often than not malign, isolating, and divisive. Ladies and gentlemen, failure is unthinkable. We must ensure that technological progress advances rather than outpaces human well-being. If tech won't give parents the tools to take back control, we must do so by working together to improve awareness and turn our kids' use of technology from a societal norm that harms to a societal exception that benefits. The time to do that is now, before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you for this reminder that protecting our humanity in the digital age begins with safeguarding the younger generation. سؤال آخر.
Another question, how can we reinforce this feeling of responsibility through educational systems? The next panel discussion will take us into this space entitled When Innovation Outpaces Humanity, Can We Catch Up? This session brings together visionary leaders from the worlds of politics, research and industry, and it will discuss how to continue innovating and progressing while guiding innovation in line with our human values. Please join me in welcoming our moderating Gaurav Gupta, Global Managing Partner at Dalberg Consulting. And he's going to be joined by His Excellency Mr. Sayasat Nurbek, Minister of Science and Higher Education of Kazakhstan. The XPRIZE CEO Anousheh Ansari, and last but not least, Matthew Camp, Google researcher.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a real pleasure to be able to host this discussion after two wonderful discussions around how do you put humanity at the center of education. And I think we're going to continue that discussion with a real focus on something that all of you have been discussing in this conference today, you'll be discussing tomorrow. We keep talking about innovation, the innovation in education. And how do we actually make sure that that innovation is not for innovation's sake, but is actually delivering human outcomes? And you may be wondering what this wonderful set of panelists, but very diverse set of panelists, are doing on this one topic. And I think it's actually amazing that we have the perspective of government, how to ensure that when we think about policies, those policies are not simply driving innovation, but going to how does that lead to a human outcome? How do we ensure that technology is not simply a leap in technology, but a leap in humanity? And how do we actually shape innovation in a really deliberate way so it's not innovation for innovation's sake, but actually think about how we would actually use it? So I could not think of better panelists to have this discussion with, and I'm going to just dive in to that discussion. We only have 20 minutes. Your Excellency Sayasat, I'm going to put you in the hot seat first. You know, Kazakhstan has been a leading light in terms of very quickly embracing AI education, putting it across primary, secondary, and tertiary. For you as a legislator, what is it that you actually want to get out of that investment? Is it simply about competitiveness and human capital? What is a success metric for you?
Well, thank you for your question, and thank you for having me here at WISE. For countries like Kazakhstan, AI is seeing not just a new technology, but also this great equalizer, a new tool, very powerful tool that can boost productivity, that can bring us innovation, that can actually lift our economy to the next level. So there are three clear, very distinct goals we put with this new program. And Kazakhstan, we're very proud, we are one of the first nations in the world to make AI compulsory throughout our national curricula. So starting from this year, every single student in Kazakhstan has to take its mandatory compulsory AI courses. Not just any courses, but carefully tailored, very practical, down-to-earth, certificate-based courses we designed in partnership with Google, Coursera, Huawei, Yandex. So we're trying to tap into different expertise. It's Chinese, it's American, it's Russian. So goal one, productivity. I mean, we try to teach every single student in Kazakhstan not just theory, not just why algorithms are important, how they work, but applicability. We try to teach them very practical hand-on skills so they can build their own agents. And what we see, there's this a new word I'm going to teach you today. It's BG and AG. So BG, it's before generative AI. Everything we did, all the policies and tools, frameworks, platforms we built were BG, before generative AI. Then the generative AI came in. This big revolution is happening. Now we're transferring from AG, after generative AI. Now it happened so fast, we're going to from chatbots to agentic AI, agents, more autonomous beings, entities that can do complete tasks. So the simple research showed that if you train enough people, critical mass, to learn how to use these agents or even train their own agents, the productivity boosts. So your 10 million people work as 100 million people. So economic layer is there. We want to train enough AI talent, maybe not high level, but massive training program to give as much AI trained people as possible. And there's huge shortage of AI talent in the world, which grows exponentially. The second goal is try to capture that new wave of venture capital. And what's happening, it's crazy. Now the venture capitalists all over the world are hunting down AI talent. And you would see this big news, Scale AI founder was hunted by Meta for $14 billion. So forget about soccer transfers, AI transfers, AI venture capital is the hottest thing on the planet at the time being. You take a look at the $5 trillion NVIDIA net worth and $500 billion net worth of OpenAI. So we're trying to go to the next stage, and it's not just about training. We give some computing power, some basic seed funding to any faculty member and student so they can build their own AI agents. And we call this program How to Train Your Dragon. Anybody can train their own dragon. So capturing that wave of venture capital investment by creating large funnel out of our higher education system, for example. So every year we train hundreds of thousands of students in basic AI skills. We select 100,000 students for AI entrepreneurship module. So by the end of the academic year, we produce thousands and thousands of AI startups and AI agents. And third idea is quite it's kind of more on a policy based. We believe that great promise of AI hasn't been delivered yet. It is still domain of large tech companies, of large national strategies. But what about small and medium enterprises? What about ordinary citizens who really want to have that power of AI, that really want to have that added value of AI? So by introducing this program, we want to make sure all the small and medium enterprises in Kazakhstan have some what we call artificial narrow intelligence, and it's a big new word out there on the market. So any company, smaller, medium companies, they say, well, I don't have resources to train my large language model. I don't have those funding and huge computing power, but I want to have narrow intelligence. I want to have algorithms and micro models that know everything about my particular organization, and they use my proprietary data. So this is the model we're now trying to introduce in Kazakhstan. We teach thousands of students, and we hook them up with small and medium companies and say, look, these people will help you to train your own dragon, to train your own micro model, so that your agents, you'll have your own AI agent helping your businesses, automating your tasks. So these are three very pragmatic, down-to-earth goals we're trying to implement in Kazakhstan.
And Your Excellency, that makes a lot of sense from a government perspective, but I want you to talk from your own self as a human, I mean, as a parent, right? It can feel very easy to say AI boosts productivity, it'll boost productivity for you, for your country, and then it'll boost productivity for countries that are competing with you. So we can all be on a productivity hamster wheel. The question I want to know is, when your children are now entering a world of AI, being taught with and about AI, how are we thinking about that whole education turning out humans that are happier, that are kinder? Because the idea that it boosts productivity feels like, well, that's only useful until the next person boosts their productivity and that competes. What do you want for your children out of this?
It's a good question, actually, and it worries me a lot. And there's a great, road to hell was paved with good intentions. And as with any great technology in history of humankind, I think AI is now going through that period of great expectations problems. They say, oh, it will change everything. It will revolutionize everything. There's this Gartner cycle. I'm sorry, I'll jump down to my children right away. It has to go through free filters or free cycles. The technology, it's there. The revolution has happened or is happening. Economy, it's not still there. It's not cheap. It will get cheap much faster. And then there's social filter, social cycle. Then it will go down to the masses. So it'll be available to millions and millions of people around the world. That's where we'll have problems. A good friend of mine, actually, Stavros, yesterday we had a brief discussion, and he said, well, look, this is what happened with social media. We never had any proper training, massive training at school level, even kindergarten level, ethics. So people were not used to that great, we're not trained, we were not given certain ethical principles to use that great new tool. And what's happening, social media has brought the worst in us. Right, hatred, bigotry, everything, lies, fake news. Now imagine there's even more powerful tool coming on market with huge potential. And if people are not mass, and it's happening so fast, too fast for any government or any parent to respond. So imagine if you're not trained properly, there's no ethics, how much problems we're going to face very soon. So taking my kids, for example, I think everything will change. The way we interact with digital platforms, the way human and computers interact, is going to change completely. I was Googling something the other day. My 10-year-old daughter, my youngest, she approached me, what's this G? I said, it's Google, honey. It's the most recognized brand in the world. Sucks. So, the way the graphical user interfaces we're facing now, the buttons, clicking, drop-down menus is going to change.
Well actually,
outsource, going to technology, great transfer to tech guy. But what I expect from my children, I don't want to restrict them. I want them to get full capacity, full potential of these great new resources available to them. But now it takes a lot of responsibility on our side, me and my wife, to talk our children on how not to use AI and where not to use AI. Because the school systems, we're failing to deliver those massive ethical principles, how to use this new powerful tool.
Well, this is a great segue to Matthew. And Matthew, firstly, I want to release you from having to speak on behalf of Google. All of us are today speaking on behalf of ourselves as humans. But this question of...
Speak of the devil.
This question of, our morals, our ethics, when we think about these products, at the heart of them sits a code, sits an algorithm. And we code our moral values. We code our ethics. Who's in the room? Now, you've been part of many new product development. Who's in the room when tech companies develop these things and are effectively coding our values in? Because it's very hard for us from the outside to see who should be in the room.
All right. Okay, so that's my personal opinion, but also I think what I'm saying is reflecting industry best practices. So there's all these best practices that's been written about, in so many books. I could point you to those books. There's like user-centered design, human-centered design. There's also the lean startup methodology. If you guys are not familiar with those, it's good to get look them up. So the basic idea here is that, don't wait until you have your product built to get feedback. Right from the start, even before you know what is the product to build, start interacting with potential stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, this means, not just students and teachers, but also parents. Just really getting a hang of them, and then there's a whole range of research methodologies that all these best practices would recommend that we use to get a sense of what's the right thing to build. So I think I'll just share one anecdote, which was that, in a lot of our product research, we do interviews and other kinds of methodologies with teachers, for example. There were just times when, teachers would just write back to me after an interview saying, hey, thanks so much for taking the time to consult us on what you are actually planning to build. There was one time when a teacher drove 3 hours down from Connecticut all the way down to New York City where I was based, just to meet with us, to give us her feedback. So I thought that was really valuable, just getting that opportunity to put the human into the loop.
The question I do have, though, is there's all these unintended consequences. I mean, I think it's very seductive, this idea of human in the loop, and I think we sort of talk about this as an equation. Human plus AI can do more. That actually doesn't mean that the human is doing more. In fact, humans can start to cognitively decline, but with the help of AI, make us feel like we're doing more. Mapping is a great example, right? Digital mapping is a great example where we're so used to using Google Maps and other map software that that part of our brain has actually declined massively over the last 10 years, and there's been a lot of research on that. These are unintended consequences happening over time. Do you think when technology companies are thinking about the introduction of those kind of products, how are we thinking about how they look and feel in a sort of general equilibrium way? Do you think there's enough research going on that, or do you think we're releasing things faster than we have the absorptive capacity as a culture to know what to do with them?
Well, I mean, we've actually done some of this research, and one of our academic peer-reviewed papers actually was cited just 2 weeks ago in the New York Times. So basically, the thing is, when you think about these kinds of big issues, like, the future of work and the future of workforce skills, so a lot of my work is on workforce training within the company. Well, one way to think about that is that sometimes it feels helpless, when we think that, hey, technology is changing so fast, and what does this mean, right? But there are actually established research processes to really understand what this means, to distill, how is AI, for example, or new technology changing how people are doing their work, and then by extension, what are the skills and knowledge, and how are these skills and knowledge shifting because of the way that work is shifting. So that's one of our publications. It's actually influencing how universities like Carnegie Mellon, where I used to be a professor, they're revamping one class to actually teach some of the stuff that we have in our research. Countries are also using our research to inform some of their national initiatives. The basic idea here is that, well, you can try to do research with populations that are really more so-called early adopters, right? Based on this assumption that, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So if you can find those guys who are really at the margins, the most cutting-edge guys, try to understand how they're actually doing their work and how their work is changing because of technology, and then work backwards to figure out how their skills and knowledge needs to change. That would actually inform the kinds of things that, like Gaurav, you're mentioning, right? It's not just reskilling and upskilling, but it's also safeguarding against skill loss and de-skilling. So that's the kinds of skills and knowledge that's on the critical path that we cannot afford to lose.
Well, I'd like to ask Anousheh this question as well, because Anousheh, XPRIZE is just renowned for the discipline it brings to thinking about innovation. Firstly, just zooming up 30,000 feet. Are we today in the education space, we keep talking about innovation, are we so obsessed with innovation that we are going well ahead of our ability to actually absorb it? Are things moving too fast, in your opinion? And then I'll have a follow-up.
Thank you. I think when you talk about innovation for the sake of innovation, which is what's happening right now, then the benefit to society and humanity can't be quantified in an equitable way, which is what you're talking about. Can the society as a whole benefit from it? And right now what's happening, I think, we're just building more powerful AI models. There's new version coming out every day, and one is better than the other, while we have most of the population of the world trying to even understand what this thing is. So I think one thing we focus on at XPRIZE is to have deliberate ways where we try to guide innovation towards specific outcomes. And I think that's what's missing right now. I don't have problem with fast pace of innovation if it's moving toward an outcome, and at least that outcome is known by people who are going to use it. So right now we're just developing tools that are getting more powerful to the point that people who are creating it, people who are at the center of the AI revolution, evolution, what you want to call it, they are worried about how fast it's growing. They are saying, we don't understand how it's learning. We don't understand how it's improving itself. And what we're doing, which we've never done in our entire history of humanity, is giving agency away from ourselves to something alien. I mean, AI is an alien intelligence. It's something that truly is not transparent even to the creators of it, how it's evolving. And for us to just not putting any sort of limit on how fast we're growing it, I think it's just careless.
Can I ask, and I think this is something the audience will find very interesting, the XPRIZE has a very deliberate approach on how it thinks about innovation, I think reflecting the values you just spoke about. Maybe take us inside that. Like, how do you ensure that when you are designing these prizes, they're really designed with the human at the center in terms of the outcomes?
So, we have an equity principle we apply to whenever we design a prize, because anything can have unintended consequences. And we use a lot of the principles that was mentioned. But what we do is we try to understand the problem we're trying to solve. We start with the problem. And we try to deliberately design these prizes with outcomes in mind. So when we put an incentive competition out there, we don't just say, go solve this problem. We say, solve this problem and show us by showing these 3 or 4 specific measurable things. And that drives innovation to a specific area. And I think that is critical in making sure that you are not designing in a way that you may displace a part of the community, or you may come up with a solution that's not affordable or accessible by part of the community. And the way we do that is by including people who will be the stakeholders, people who will be impacted by it, in the room when we're designing these prizes, by talking to them, interviewing them, asking them questions. And then when we test these solutions, we test them in the place where we think it will, have the desired impact, and make sure that it's demonstrated that it did prove that those outcomes are possible in the context of the part of the society where this problem existed, and they actually solved that problem. So I think inclusivity and diversity of thought, whether it's in the understanding of the problem or in the innovation space, is critical in having the outcome that you will then be happy with at the end.
This feels like exactly the thing we're underinvesting in at the moment. Okay, we're running out of time, so lightning round, 30 seconds. Your Excellency, education policy or initiative that another government is doing that you're somewhat jealous of?
Well, there's this great program run by government of Finland called The Elements of AI, where they try to upskill a certain percentage of their adult population. I think it's a great program, and they did a great job, because adult population, there's this digital gap, digital divide now happening. And a bottleneck, actually, our faculty, for example, in Kazakhstan, now the students know more about AI than their teachers and faculty members. So we have to train a lot of adult population. So government of Finland is doing a really great job.
Matthew, you do cutting-edge research. I'm curious, if you had an open checkbook, what's a piece of research you'd be suggesting tech companies undertake straight away? What's a piece of research that you would suggest tech companies undertake straight away to make their products more human-centered?
Well, I would actually echo what Anousheh said in a different way, which is that please make sure that in your user research, include user populations at the margins. I do have one academic paper many years ago on this topic. Yeah, designing e-learning games. Yeah, right. Everybody says, okay, great idea. But we try to do that for and with village children to really improve rural literacy. Eventually, realized that a lot of all these games that we were following were very Western in their ideology, and then that led us to really study the traditional village games that they themselves play. We saw so many of the differences between the two classes of games. That led us to really, come up with a set of design principles to just do this kind of designs for them.
Wonderful. And Anousheh, no funding constraints for you. What is the XPRIZE in education you would launch?
I think in education specifically, our whole landscape for education is changing. So when we look at it, right now, people will not go to college and spend 4 years learning something because, you know, by the time they graduate, whatever they learn is obsolete. So there's the whole pathway of learning has to change. So it would be a system-wide competition to understand what is the system of lifelong learning based on curiosity that would benefit us throughout our lives and make sure that we stay, you know, ahead of actually the technologies that we're bringing to build our society.
Amazing. I look forward to that. My impression from this discussion is that really what we have spoken about is we're in a moment where we've started with the technology rather than starting with a human problem, and we're now trying to catch up. So thank you again for sharing your insights, and I'd love the audience to please thank our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
شكرا جزيلا، شكرا لضيوفنا ومتحدثينا الكرام.
أود أن أذكركم أننا غدا في افتتاح اليوم الثاني من قمة الوايز سنبدأ بجلسة لمؤسسة التعليم فوق الجميع. في الجلسة الختامية سنعلن عن الفائزين بجائزة وايز. لا تنسوا كذلك مجلس وايز والتجارب والفعاليات التي ستستمر طوال اليوم الثاني أيضا. استمعوا معي إلى هذه الفكرة. التأمل في مستقبل التعليم يبدأ من داخل العقل البشري. فهمتوا هذا؟ فقرتنا الأخيرة تأخذنا في رحلة لاستكشاف العلاقة بين الإبداع والإدراك من خلال الموسيقى. فلنرحب بعازف البيانو والملحن وعالم الأعصاب الذي يستكشف من خلال أدائه الموسيقي الفريد كيف يتشابك الصوت مع الأفكار. سيداتي سادتي، رحبوا بنيكولاس نامورادزي. سيقدم لنا عرضا أنا شخصيا لم أفهمه 100%. هو عالم أعصاب وملحن وعازف بيانو. أعتقد أنكم ستشاهدون شيئا لأول مرة تشاهدوه. نيكولاس نامورادزي. The stage is yours.
And he's a composer.
أعتقد أنها ستكون خاتمة مناسبة ليوم كرسناه للحديث عن القيم الإنسانية.
A fitting conclusion to a day that has been dedicated to discussing values and humanity. Please.
Yeah, 2012.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse the slight delay. We need some sound on the piano, otherwise I can't really give a piano performance. I might look very fashionable, but unfortunately it's the music that matters. I promise it was working perfectly 2 hours ago. It's always much easier when you have an acoustic piano. This tends not to happen. So the team is doing their best right now. In the meantime, I can try to entertain you. Because as you can see, well, very briefly, you saw a little bit. Yes, well, thank you. You saw just a little bit of what happens in my brain when I play music. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering, if this is showing my neural activity, why am I not wearing one of those funny swimming caps with nodes coming out of it that would make me look like an alien on stage? Well, there are a couple reasons for this. First of all, it wouldn't look very good. I think I would look a little bit ridiculous on stage. But more importantly, any single snapshot into what happens in the brain shows a lot of different things. When I'm playing the piano, I'm not only thinking about what I'm playing, of course. You will see automatic processes like digestion and breathing happening in the brain. You will also see me simply thinking about different things. For example, I might be playing and I might be thinking about what I just had for lunch, or what I wish I had had for lunch, but definitely not in Doha because the food here is wonderful. Or perhaps an email I need to write, which would definitely have happened here in Doha because we have a lot of emails to write here. So anyway, sounds like the sound is on. It was on. Great. I shall return to the piano, and I hope you enjoy this very interesting demonstration of my inner process while I play this music. The first piece of music will be a prelude by the French composer Claude Debussy called Les sons et les parfums tournent dans l'air du soir. The sounds and scents swirl in the evening air, or as I like to call it, the colors swirl in my brain. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to finish my earlier train of thought, the way these visualizations are created are thus not from a single snapshot of me playing this piece, but from dozens of repetitions. So earlier this year, I was wearing that swimming cap for 9 hours a day, many days over, playing this musical program over and over and over again. We then stacked the data and saw the correlations. So what you're seeing here is only the brain activity that was present in all of the repetitions in order to show clearly what happens in my brain when playing this piece. Not one time when I was happy or tired or hungry, but in general. Now, this was a groundbreaking methodology. This has never been possible before. This technology is called the glass brain. It's by far the most complex neural visualization tool we have in the world, and it's the first time it could be applied to piano performance because of a very new methodological approach that really cracked a very hard nut in the imaging process for musical performance. I won't get into the technical details about that, and we don't have that much time to get into the details of this project generally, but if you'd like to hear more about it, I was in conversation earlier today with the wonderful Mr. Stavros Yanuka, and you will catch this podcast when it comes out in due course. So if you're curious, please listen to that for more details. Now, why is this important? What you just saw was a fireworks show. All of the brain lights up when one plays music. Not just those parts of the brain that we associate with music making, like the auditory cortex, the motor cortex. Everything lights up. The fact of the matter is, nothing connects different parts of the brain as much as making music. It is just about the most complex activity the brain can do in terms of coordinating different sensory modalities, coordinating the hands, the feet. It's an extreme full brain workout. And these visualizations are an extraordinary testament to that. So, part of the point we are trying to advance with this work is to show that learning music at any point in our lives isn't just a good idea because it's fun, it's a kind of cultural enhancement. No, if you want to be a great mathematician and you're at school, instead of doing 10 hours of math a week, you could do 8 hours of maths and 2 hours of music. You'll become a much better mathematician. It will turbocharge your neural development unlike anything else. This applies to us later in life as well. There is no activity that is as neuroprotective as making music. If someone with Alzheimer's cannot speak anymore, you turn the music on, they can sing. If someone with Parkinson's cannot move anymore, you turn on the music, they can dance perfectly in rhythm. Music can circumvent the usual neural pathways that will degenerate with time. So this is really crucial for our understanding of the brain and how we can work with it. So what I'm going to do today, I just realized I'm up on this big screen, is show a little bit of each visualization that you shall see in the pieces. I shall play 2 more pieces of music and talk about what you're seeing, why it's important, and how the pieces are different. This is the really fun part of this project. You can see how different the brain looks depending on what I'm doing. So let's cut back to the visualizations. Thank you very much. And let's pull up my brain again. Let's do a quick 101 crash course in neurobiology in under 3 minutes. Let's see if we can set a world record here. So quickly, let's talk about the outer areas of the brain, the cortical areas. This is my frontal lobe. So you're seeing the right side of the brain. So if I'm standing this way, you're seeing the right hemisphere. Here's the frontal lobe, which is primarily associated with planning, rational thinking, and especially in the prefrontal cortex, you get that very top-down processing in the brain. Then we have the parietal lobe, behind the frontal lobe, which is involved in sensory integration. So this is the part of the brain where the different senses come together into the experience that we have. The occipital lobe in the back is primarily involved in visual processing. And then we have the temporal lobe, which is of particular importance to us because it houses the auditory cortex up here, which is involved in hearing and identifying music. Another important section is towards the back of the frontal lobe. Here we have the motor cortex, which is involved in movement, also a very important part of the puzzle. Now let's talk about the colors. Here you see these yellow highways. This is called DTI, diffusion tensor imaging, which shows the white matter tracts in the brain that connect the different parts of the brain. So think of this as the kind of highway network of the brain. So let's keep moving. And now you shall see the brain light up in different colors. So this is actually the piece of music that we were just looking at. You see all these different colors. So we saw some blue, some green, and some red. These are different brain waves, different levels of activation. The red is theta. That's 4 to 7 hertz, a quite calm level of activation. Then we have alpha at 8 to 12. That's in blue. And then we have beta in green, which is 13 to 20 hertz. So we're seeing some beta here, some theta, and we shall see some alpha as we move around to the other side of the brain. In a second, a nice wash of blue coming up in about 3, 2, 1. There we go. Perfect timing. You see all that blue? That is alpha. You might be wondering, isn't there something below theta? What happens with the 1 to 3 hertz? Yes, that's delta. But that's associated with sleep. And believe it or not, I tend not to be asleep when playing the piano. Though maybe if we were to take a scan of my brain right now, there would be more delta than usual because I am very jet-lagged. Anyway, this is what you're seeing, and this is, again, a short excerpt of the piece you just saw. The way the videos work with the playing is that we have another bit of software that changes the playback speed depending on how it hears the speed of my playing. So we have another set of adjustments to resynchronize the video to my live playing. Now, the next excerpt I'm going to show you is of a piece I'm not really going to play. I'm just going to play 60 seconds of it because I think it's so interesting and worth taking a look at. This is another prelude by Debussy, La Cathédrale Engloutie, the submerged cathedral. And this is what I'd like to show you. There doesn't seem to be much going on right now. That's the point. My brain is a lot calmer in this next piece because it's a much slower piece of music. It's very relaxed. So you see actually in the brain how much more relaxed and actually just chilled out my brain looks compared to the first visualization that you saw. So we'll just listen to about 60 seconds of this, and I think it would be a fun activity for you to just feel the correlation between the visualization and the way in which the music is flowing. just a very short demonstration. Well, thank you. But I hope it's clear how different the brain looks depending on what I'm doing. Now, the next piece I'm going to play is Scriabin's second piano sonata, which is in 2 parts. It's in 2 movements. And this is one of my favorite pieces in the whole program. This program is called the Neuro Recital, and usually it's about an hour and a half long. We're doing a very condensed version of it here. The interesting and important part of this is how music affects us emotionally, because this is a very dramatic piece with these big emotional climaxes. And this is where you see the inner part of the brain, the ancient brain, parts like the limbic system light up. This is where we feel the kind of visceral emotions. So it's actually quite extraordinary. Compared to everything that you just saw, we're zooming in, and you'll see this happen in one of the big climaxes of the first movement of this piece that I'm just about to play. Be careful, because the light is almost blindingly strong. You see, we're moving into the central part of the brain, so we're zooming into the inner areas, these subcortical parts of the brain, and as we approach a very big climax, this is what happens. Blinding intensity in the inner part of the brain. So apparently, this is what my brain looks like when I'm emotional. Some of my pianist colleagues asked me, don't you feel slightly uncomfortable that this very inner experience is being displayed for audiences everywhere? And I felt that this is what we as artists do. We try to illuminate the human experience. And it's certainly, well, I mean, just look at that. It's quite crazy, actually, the sheer intensity of the emotional experience that we can see in the brain so clearly. It's what we do as artists to try to illuminate the human experience, and this is something we're really doing for science. So it's just an extraordinary quantification of this very subjective experience that we have as musicians. So this is a slightly longer work, of about 7 minutes in length, and it's a really extraordinary narrative journey, so I hope you enjoy the music and the visualizations with it. Thank you very much. Now we come to the final piece in the program, which will be the second movement, so the second part of this piece, Scriabin's second piano sonata. So let's pull up the visualization again. The thing here is that the piece you're going to hear right now is by far the fastest and technically most challenging of the pieces that we just listened to. So the neural activity will be a lot faster than anything you've just seen. There's a lot of coordination going along and a lot of bouncing back and forth between the prefrontal cortex and the motor cortex. So a kind of a constant back and forth. You're seeing just a lot of activity in that frontal area. So you'll see, especially between the prefrontal cortex and then the motor cortex, just a lot of bouncing back and forth. As you can see right now, you see a lot of beta going on there. So it's very active. Another interesting thing we see in this piece is a lot of activation in the occipital lobe. This is the visual processing center. And it's quite unusual that in the Scriabin piece, I have a lot more visual activity than in any of the others. Now, we were wondering why this might be. I don't see more images in this piece than I do in any of the other pieces in the program. But the funny thing is that Scriabin, this composer, had synesthesia. He saw colors when writing and listening to music. So it's just a fun theory, but we wonder if Scriabin's synesthesia somehow became embedded in his music and then influences the performers who play it. It might not be hard science, but it's just a fun hypothesis to have. Anyway, this shall be the final piece on the program. It will conclude this session. So thank you again for listening. I hope you found it interesting. And if you have more questions about the project, of course, we only could delve into these things very briefly. Don't hesitate to find me. I'm around during the summit. Thank you again for your wonderful work, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. We still have the last piece.